everyone, this is Soham and today I bring you an amazing personality, Miss Chavi Arora. Miss Arora is actually an international contract law attorney and she is the founder and CEO at Juris at Work. She is having a lot of experience that she will share with us. So stay connected, stay tuned, see you in the podcast. So hello everyone, this is Soham and today we have Miss Chavi Arora and she is the international contract law attorney and the founder and CEO at Juris at Work. So welcome to EQ Talks, Miss Arora.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Soham.
Yeah, thank you. So could you please start by telling us a bit about yourself and your journey as the founder and CEO at Juris at Work?
Sure. So my name is Chavi Arora. I am a law graduate. I have done my master's in law as well. I have started my own law firm very recently by the name of Juris at Work. We are a team of legal professionals who are providing remote international services to clients globally. So we cater to Indian clients as well as international clients. Our clientage is mostly coming from startups, businesses, corporate sector, and we are engaged in terms of providing them specialized legal services tailored to their needs and requirements. The specializations that we have are contract drafting, intellectual property rights protection, legal compliances and legal research, legal documentation, and other administrative tasks as well. To briefly describe about my educational journey, I have done my education, I have done my studies from school in Delhi itself. I have been born and brought up in Delhi. My undergraduation has been from Lady Shri Ram College in political science honors. I then went on to pursue my law degree from Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. And subsequently, I did my master's in law from National Law University, Odisha. After 4 years of practice, I have opened my own remote international law firm by the name of Juris at Work.
So since you have started, what were some of the initial challenges that you have faced when starting Juris at Work and how did you overcome that?
So I think the first and the foremost challenge that I faced was to create. So if you have to create a structure, you need a foundation in place. So the first task, the initial task, was to come up with the name of the firm. I wanted a name which is something that appeals to the clients, which is something that that is relatable to the team, that is relatable to the professionals also who are working with us, and something which is able to create a balance. And so the first and foremost challenge is with respect to the kind of the name you want. The second is with respect to the kind of if you want a website, you need to develop an entire website. So to develop a website is not it is not rocket science, but it's also not that easy. So you need professionals dedicated to that. And how are you perceiving your vision? This is the third point that I was coming to have I'm so sorry, to have your own vision. So to have a vision in place is the first thing that you actually need practically. I mean, to have your own website and to have your own name is something that is a thought process, but to have a vision for your own firm is something which is very important. So I knew that I want to create a law firm which is not in a traditional sense. I do not want to create a law firm wherein we have professionals who are coming to me 9 to 5, who are not being paid well, and who just being who are coming in their uniform, sitting in front of a laptop, working for me, and then going home. I didn't want to create that sort of a setup, and it's very personal. It depends on person to person. For me, I wanted to create a space for people who are wanting to work remotely from their own homes and who can give me 100%. who can give me equal to as they would have come and in a physical space. And working in a remote setup for a couple of years myself, I decided to give this opportunity to other people as well, to other legal professionals like me. And the like minded professionals are always jumping at such opportunities because in India, um, what I've witnessed is that remote work is still not that popular. You still require a physical full-time work. Remote work is also full-time. It can be full-time. However, a physical presence is always, appreciated in India. It is something that is in demand. But this is, I think, this is very camouflaged because this is one myth that I'd want to break. That remote work is equally satisfying. It is equally rewarding. Of course, the perks, there are pros and cons of both of them in remote work and in, because in physical work there is more accountability that people say. However, in I do not believe in that kind of a setup. I also believe that we have accountability in a remote setup as well. So to have a vision for your firm, which I thought was to create a remote firm and to create for an audience which is international. So this was the vision, and to have a balance between the professionals and between the clients. So even if I have a team working with me, I never say that a team is working under me. I always say that a team is working with me because I do not have hierarchy in my firm. We do not create, we do not have that sort of a, line by line stage. We don't have that. So to enable to have that vision that, there has to be a proper balance between the clients and between the professionals. How to strike that balance, how to create that platform is something that has to be kept in mind before you establish any firm. And the second most important practical challenge is in terms of resources. What do you think are the financial resources that you have to establish your own firm? At the end of the day, you do need financial resources. You do require, however, I would say that if somebody does not have a huge capital, that's all right. If you have a vision in place and you have some amount of capital with you, you can always and always, jump into it and just get into the process, and gradually it comes to you. So you have to keep your faith in that.
I agree. Okay,
Right.
I would love to repeat that you have just told that at Juris at work, you all work not under anyone, you all work with each other.
Yeah.
Here lies the difference between a boss and a leader. Really
Yeah.
salute. Okay,
Thank you so much.
okay, that's amazing. So, as an international contract law attorney, what would you see as the biggest challenge and opportunities in this field today?
As a contract drafting expert internationally, I think one of the foremost challenges that we have is to tackle AI. Uh, AI and technology these days. If you simple Chat GPT, you go to Chat GPT, you go and you just type draft a shareholders contract. It'll give you a draft. Why do they need us? Why do clients need lawyers if they have AI and they can do everything themselves? I mean, in my journey, I even saw when I reached out to startups, I saw a few startups having their own engineers drafting contracts. So they don't have a legal team at all. Now, that is something to be concerned about. AI can give you drafts, AI can give you contracts, but are those contracts having a legal mind in place? No. Are those contracts protecting you against any sort of a legal obligation? No. They are merely drafts. They're merely structured drafts and formats that you just, basically filling in your own information and you're sending it across to the other party. A simple NDA, non-disclosure agreement for that matter. So they're just templates basically. So because of that, I think because of the reliance of clients on AI, the value of contracts for lawyers has somehow reduced because clients do not repose their faith on you. Um, because they have AI to help them. So they feel that drafting a contract is not something which is, hey, it is not something that's difficult. However, that's not the case. It's a myth. That's really not the case. A good contract drafting lawyer will always and always have a contract which is not just protecting you, it is trying to preserve a business relationship. It is trying to, because a contract is always between two parties. At the end of the day, if a contract gets breached, of course you're always trying to protect yourself, you're always trying to have an obligation in place which is helping you. However, for me as a drafting expert, I have always tried to protect the business relationship between both the parties. Mostly what happens is clients come to us with templates which have been given to them by the other side, and you have to work yourself around those templates. Now, to work yourself around those templates, you can also not completely overhaul it, and you can also not have a complete different change, a new addition to it, because then it impacts the client's relationship, which is just being established with the other party. So you need to have a proper balance. So this is one of the foremost challenges that I've faced in terms of AI, that because of we have so many websites, so many artificial intelligence, I mean, varied websites we have these days which are helping you. Now, drafts and templates is not an issue, but to completely rely on that and not seek a legal advice is something which is it'll just going to land you in legal trouble. And also, I've seen clients coming to us after they've done this. So I have a few clients who have had their help with the AI, and now they're coming to me after they've landed in legal troubles. And that's when I actually advise them that don't do this. You're trying to save cost there, you're trying to save your fee there, right? You're trying to save your money there. But what are you doing? You're ending up giving into 10x of your money.
Exactly.
And that is something that in Indian audience, I've always felt that they are always wanting to first explore their jugaad options first, and then coming to lawyers for their professional opinions. That should never be the case. You should never ever compromise on your legal consultations. Even if they're even if they're digging your pocket a little, spend it. Do it, because that's ultimately protecting you.
Exactly. I also agree with all the conversation. So I think our listeners would love to hear about some insights and importance of legal research and writing in the modern legal landscape.
Sure. So I think these days legal research and legal writing is in vogue. You absolutely need to have that skill as a lawyer, whether you are in civil law, corporate law, matrimonial law, I mean, whatever, criminal law. Legal writing and legal research is one key you need to get. I mean, it's a skill that you need to imbibe, and it should be in when you're fresh graduating. It should be in your law career. It should be in your initial years itself. As I have also been a legal writer at an international law firm. I worked as a legal writer for a couple of months there, and I got that job as a legal writer only because I had the legal writing skills. So I always say that before you jump on, before you, even if you're working in a firm, you're working as an in-house counsel, you're working as a litigating lawyer, you're working with an NGO, you're working with in fellowships, legal writing is a must. You should have a good amount of acumen to write legally, because legal writing does not come initially, it does not come to you. It is a skill. You need to develop it. You need to use those phrases. You need to use those particular sentences, to actually enable the writers to understand your point of view, but through a legal mindset. So, legal writing is a must. Legal research is the second most important thing. Why I said legal writing is a must? Because if you are not able to write and articulate your thoughts well, anything that you have in you will not be able to reach to the other party, right? So articulation is a must, and legal writing builds that. The second thing is that in terms of legal research, I think the first and foremost thing after law school, whenever anybody joins any lawyer, any in-house or anything, they're always taught with two things: legal research and case briefs. So, legal research is an art. I always feel legal research is an art. I have done so much legal research in my legal career, and it also helps you to articulate. It builds your legal memory. It also makes your concepts, legal concepts, very strong. The foundation is built for your legal career, because when you do a legal, say for instance, simple legal research, say um, on res judicata in CPC that we have, uh, any sort of legal research. So you know what res judicata is. But when you're researching in terms of case laws, when you're researching the point of view from the Supreme Court, from the High Courts, you're researching the point of view of different, legal forums around it. You do not just have a legal perspective. I mean, perspective is developed, the legal memory is imbibed, but you also get to have your own point of view. That point of view is very important, because today in the world that we're living, you need to have your own point of view to engage in a debate. If you are asking me a question, I need to have a pro or a con to it, or maybe a balancing approach to it, right? It has to be constructive,
Exactly.
and that is only developed through your skill of legal research, specifically for international clientage. Legal research is pretty important also for Indian clientage, but internationally as well. We have a lot of clients who are only and only looking for specific legal research. So they give us a legal problem, you have to do your legal research, you have to analyze it, and you have to give it to them. That is the only task, and you earn pretty well.
Yeah. That's a really valuable perspective. So now, considering your experience, how would you describe your leadership style and how it has evolved over time?
So I'm a recent founder. So in my recent, couple of months that I have been a leader myself, I've had my own set of challenges, own share of challenges. I've had people leaving me. I've had interns, and I've had legal professionals, some of my team members disrupting work. That has been a challenge. But at the same time, I think to be a leader, you need to be first a good manager. The managerial skills are very important, because when you are leading a law firm, you're not working there, so the accountability is always on you. As a leader, I think, especially as a leader who's just freshly come into the market, I think you have to be a leader, you have to be a salesperson, you have to pitch yourself, you have to be the person who's doing the work, you have to also manage the cases, you have to also manage the clients. So client management, case management, team management, I think these three are essentials in a law firm. And as a leader, you need to be really, really, really good with all these three aspects, because initially I struggled. So I was recruiting people, but I just felt that my screening process might not be well enough, that I'm not able to filter out people. And I changed it. I learned it and I changed it. And I spoke to other people, and I decided, okay, this is how they do it, and this is a good, well enough screening process. Similarly, leadership skills also do not come to you inherently. You have to build them. People say that you cannot teach leadership. That is very true. You cannot train people to be leaders. Leadership is something that comes intrinsically. However, it you still learn. Gradually you learn how to be a good leader. You are a leader, but to be a good leader, you need to learn. It comes to you gradually. So I think one thing that I always thought as a leader, which I initially said it, I never want to create a hierarchy in my team. I never wanted to be the way wherein my team is not able to reach out to me, or wherein they are able to reach out to somebody and then the other person is reaching out to me. No, I always wanted to be a direct source of contact, always a direct point of contact between me and my team. I always actually wanted to create an inclusive space. I have had my education in a way from LSR, from law faculty, wherein I've always promoted inclusion, and I always promote female leaders, always. And I think that being a good leader does not just mean to you know having a good conversation with them or making them comfortable enough to reach out to you. I also feel that it also means that you are able to incentivize them and to give them good incentives, to pay them for their worth is something which is very important, because once you'll do that, they will repose that confidence in you. And I've
Yeah.
learned that through time.
Great. That's truly inspirational. I would love to hear more about what strategies have you found most effective in building and leading a successful team at your firm.
In terms of strategies, I think one of the strategies that I've followed is actually through LinkedIn. I feel that LinkedIn is a place wherein you have an entire gamut of people who are professionally and intellectually very like-minded. You don't have any other sort of platform in India wherein you can meet like-minded people like these in such a on such a platform where you're also able to interact with them, able to pitch them, able to convert them into your clients. So I think one of the
Exactly.
strategies is LinkedIn. uh, being your making your own personal brand on LinkedIn. That's very, very important to have your own personal brand, because once your personal brand is built, your firm's personal brand is built, that is the way the goodwill is sold to the clients. How do I get clients? I do not get clients through my father or through somebody, I mean, of course, word of mouth is there, but I get it through the work that I do by building my personal brand. When my clients know that this is the kind of work that they've been given, right? So this is the way that you uh, build it. The first is personal brand. The second is, I feel, you need to build your skills first. In terms of strategy, you actually need to build your own skills and then strategize according to it. So why have I only my practice areas? Why do they only include these limited practice areas? Why am I not venturing into other practice areas? Right. um, that is because the strategy is to cater to that one audience, right? The strategy is to cater to that one kind of league wherein they are able, wherein I attract clients and I also get more work in that particular practice area. I do not want to venture out in so many practice areas and then just get confused. Even the clients get confused. So if you have a firm, internationally, which is also catering to criminal space or civil space, commercial space, my personal opinion is that it is going to be very confusing for the client, and it is also going to be very confusing for you. You'll not be able to manage and handle it. I mean, how much
Exactly.
can you read? How much can you learn? How much can you give it to the client? So do limited amount of work, but be best at it. If you ask me, I am a contract drafting expert. You can ask me to draft any contract and I can draft it. So that
Yeah.
is the niche that I've built for myself. That's the specialization that I've built for myself. If you ask me about intellectual property rights for us, I can help you. I can do that because that's the niche that I've built. But of course, because contracts are always never to be seen in isolation, they're always around a certain legal subject. So you need to have something around it. But if you ask me that you have to do something in the criminal space, I might say that I am not the best person for that, right?
Yeah.
So build your own niche, that, and then build your strategy around it.
That's really interesting. Considering the current industry trends, what are some of the key trends you are seeing in the legal industry, particularly in the contract law?
Right. This is a very good question. I think one of the major trends that I'm seeing today is technology. It is legal tech. Legal tech is becoming very, very popular in terms of contract drafting. So IT based startups, IT based businesses are actually becoming very keen on contract drafting. So you have commercial contracts in terms of SaaS based contracts, in terms of contracts which are, uh, trying to protect your source codes, trying to protect your softwares. You have IPR around it. So most of them are looking for trademark and patent protection around it. So I think legal tech is a major sector which is becoming very popular, especially when the Data Privacy Act now has been the Data Protection Act has now been passed in India. I think it's one thing which is becoming very popular. Data privacy experts are now more in vogue. Even if you see the big four corporate sector, KPMG, Deloitte, all of these are asking for data privacy experts now. So if you are good with data privacy, you're definitely coming along in the field. Apart from that, cyber law is something which is really coming into vogue now. I think cyber law and data privacy is interconnected, of course. And cyber law, international trade law and cyber law is something which is becoming very popular these days, because I think that in terms of legal tech, you need to be updated with the technology apart from being a lawyer. So a lot of lawyers, no, I mean almost I think 90% of the lawyers, especially in the international space, I'm seeing a lot of attorneys there are having their own softwares. You have the CRM softwares, you have their own set of softwares wherein they have a good way of cataloging data. They have a way of cataloging their entire data into a software, proactively managing it. And this is something that lawyers really need to learn. And I think in India, we are lagging in this space wherein traditional lawyers are not so open to technology. And I think that is one thing that they really should, because technology is the future of the world. Technology is now something that you cannot let go. It is something that is going to define you. Artificial intelligence is here. It is in vogue. Everybody knows about ChatGPT. Everybody is using ChatGPT. So as lawyers, you also start, need to. And I always promote the use of ChatGPT, but I always promote a constructive use around it. I never say that you need to, if there's a draft, you just copy paste the draft and just send it to the client. That's not going to help you in the long run.
Exactly.
It might help you in the short run, but in the long run, you need to be effective, efficient, sincere, and dedicated, and you need to have your own skill into it. That has to be there. I mean, you cannot have technology do all the work for you, and the client will know. That's the very, I think that's something the client will identify it, and it's always happened. If you use
Yeah.
technology, you're able to identify it. If I give it to you in writing, you'll get to know whether I have written it or technology has written it. It's very evident.
Exactly. Yeah. There are several tools that can differentiate human generated form and AI generated form. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So besides that, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those who are looking to enter into the legal field?
My one piece of advice for aspiring lawyers will be to first study hard, study law very hard. Okay. I mean, not saying not. I mean, I'm not promoting the fact that you need to be a nerd to enter into this profession. I'm not saying that, but you need to have your legal concepts in place. If you have a strong foundation of your legal concepts, you can do anything after that. So your legal terminology, your legal concepts, your legal parlance has to be very strong. The second will be to build your communication. In law, effective communication matters a lot. Whether you're dealing with Indian clients, international clients, talking, building your own personal brand, you need to be able to effectively communicate it. And if you're not, learn it. It's very easy. Today we have good communication skills that are being taught by people for free. Learn it. Learn it, imbibe it, and be consistent at it. Consistency is very important in law, because in law you always have to be very up to date with the issues. You have to be a reader, you have to be an avid reader, you have to keep reading, you have to keep imbibing. And also, after you complete your law, always have a specialization in place. Do not do not study a specialization for the sake of academics. Take a specialization which might not be so popular, which might be popular as but something which interests you. So take that sort of a specialization, but read, study your legal concepts. That's very important.
Yeah, that's very perceptive. A very common question that has tried personally in my mind as a CEO, attorney, researcher, and a writer. How do you balance all these various roles effectively?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that is that's very on point actually. It's very difficult because when you are recently founding a law firm, it's like you're a single man army. You have to do
Exactly.
everything yourself, and I'm sure you can relate, Soham,
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
you know doing everything from pitching, from updating websites, from getting reaching to the clients, from getting work, from doing the work, from getting the work being done, from delegating the work, everything. It is a huge task. It is a big challenge. It takes a very huge amount of energy and effort from your side, but it is something that I love doing. It is something that I never say I don't want to do it or I'm tired of doing. I mean, there was a point of time in my career initially when I just thought that maybe I don't want to do this. You should never have that. If you get that thought in your mind, it means you're not on the right track. You need to change it. I never get that thought. I'm always open to work. I'm always looking forward to it. So when I get up, I'm looking forward to that sort of work. It gives a smile on my face and I'm energetic around it. I'm never having a lackadaisical approach. If you have that, if you develop that, then that means you're not on the right path. So yes,
Exactly.
it is a challenge. It is something which is very difficult, but I always thought that I have that entrepreneurial skill in me. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and my husband really supports me in that. And he has a huge role to play at the backside of the curtains, wherein he is helping me in a lot of stuff. So I think you need that sort of a support with you to help you, to encourage you, to basically you know encourage you to just go out in the world and do what you want to. And
Exactly.
I think that back support is very important. But to also deal with the challenges, you need to have a thick skin. You need to have a
Definitely.
very thick skin in this profession, because
Absolutely.
you face a lot of hurdles, you face a lot of challenges in terms of people's opinions about you, and I've faced that. And you need to, even if you're not giving it back to them, but you need to be quiet. You have to process it, you have to let it go, and you have to continue on the positive aspect of it. There are always negatives which are coming around you, but ultimately your goal and your aim is to build your own brand, to build your own own self, to build your own identity. So for that, you need to be patient, consistent. Very important. Patience is very, very important. I'm still dealing with that challenge, and I've always felt that in legal profession, patience is the key. My first
Exactly.
mentor, when I actually asked her, "What is that one challenge that you face?" she said, "It's patience, Chavi. You need to be very patient." And I felt it. That yes, you do. Whether you're litigating lawyer, in-house counsel, entrepreneur, anything in legal tech sector, you need to be very, very patient, and you need to be very consistent. Persistency and consistency has to be the key, because if you're not persevere around things, you will not be able to do it.
Yeah, that's really a very much precious advice. Okay, so besides that, one of the most vital point that everyone has to focus is that their respective personal and professional growth. So how do you ensure continuous personal and professional growth in such a demanding field?
Yes, again, a very nice question. I think because I have a firm which offers a vision of a remote setup, I think the first primary reason why I decided for a remote setup was to balance my personal and professional growth, because personal growth is also very important for you. When you say professional growth, it basically means you're getting more work through your profession. And when I'm talking about personal growth, it not just only means about building my own skills, it also means my mental personal growth. You have to be mentally sane to do things professionally, and if you're not mentally sane, you'll not be able to. So for me, 9 to 5 has never worked. I did that, but it never worked for me. because I thought that my personal growth is somehow being hampered in that setup. And that is very person to person, you know. But I just felt that, especially in a setup wherein I'm physically present. So I've always promoted a remote work because of the balance that it creates between personal and professional growth. And this challenge is always there in your mind. You know, I'm just recently married. So after recently getting married in an Indian setup, obviously you have to balance your own personal needs with the professional needs, right? And that is very, even if you're not married, even if you're single, you have to have a good, you have to concentrate on your good workout, you have to have a good health plan in place. You have to, even if you're not working out, you have to have developed some hobby, you know, on maybe. And why should you only go out on weekends? I don't understand this concept.
Yeah.
You should not just go out on weekends. I mean, what have the weekdays done to you? Because you're in a 9 to 5 setup, you're so tired, your energy is taken away, you're reaching home at 6, 7, you're just making dinner, you're so tired and you're sleeping. You're not having any time to develop your own hobby. I don't believe in this setup. I think you need to be, I mean, weekends are obviously a place where, you know, you have more time to yourself. But I think you also need to develop that time for you in the weekdays as well. From Monday to Friday, why you not there? So develop a hobby, you know. Maybe, even if the hobby is intellectual, it's a good thing. Even if the hobby is maybe legal writing, but you're enjoying it, and that hobby needs to be enjoyed. It should not be like you're mentally always occupied in terms of, you know, intellectually. You should always enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, change it. And hobbies cannot continue for so long every time. You need to change the hobby. You know, earlier I was into contemporary article writing and all. Now I've changed it. I'm more into watching podcasts on YouTube surrounding around legal issues, you know, and I'm more into other stuff. So you can do that. Maybe if I'm not, you know, intellectually writing, I'm just building my website. I'm just looking at it from a point of view, wherein I'm just seeing that, okay, I think I can do this better. I can do this better, and I'm actually inculcating more thoughts, articulating more thoughts that way. So that
Yeah.
needs to be switched.
Got it. This is an incredible insight. Personally, I am too eager to know about your vision for the future of juries at work, and what are you most excited about in the upcoming years.
Right. So, my vision for my firm is to have a massive platform wherein I have a good amount of clients and businesses, um, you know, startups who are giving us work in terms of a bulk work. My vision also includes collaborating with like-minded individuals on a space wherein we are building our own brand at an international stage. And when I say building my own brand at an international stage, I mean that if somebody says Juris at Work, they should know that, okay, this is an international remote law firm which is catering to international clients globally. So this is the vision. What was the other part of the question that you'd asked?
Okay, about the future, and what are the exciting changes that we are expecting in the upcoming futures.
Right. So, in terms of the future of the firm, I think apart from building a flat platform, I'm also looking for good, talented legal professionals to join me. I'm looking for people who are wanting to make a sincere effort at working, who are wanting to work consistently with me, and then build our own. Because when Juris at Work is going to reach a space where which I envision, which I imagine it to be, it is going to be a place, it is going to be a team effort. It is not going to be an individual effort, and if you're a part of that team, you're obviously going to reap benefits out of it. So,
Yeah.
but to have that faith is very important. So I think I want people to have faith in that sort of a structure. And I always promote constructive criticism. Always. I have
Yeah.
never lagged behind. Even if I'm delegating work, I'm always there to manage it. I'm always like at the center point of it, continuously asking for accountability, because I feel for me, I will go an extra mile for my client. Even if he's not paying me for that particular aspect, I will, because I feel client satisfaction is a must. In our profession, if you satisfy that one client, he's going to get you 10 more clients.
Exactly.
Client satisfaction is a must, and you need to have that at a top priority. So this is a future that I expect, for me to also have a team who is having its client satisfaction as a top priority.
Yeah. That's really a great podcast. Thanks a lot, Miss Aurora, for joining. Before we end up here, any final thoughts or message that you would like to share to our listeners?
I think as a founder, recent founder of a law firm, um, entrepreneurship is something that is challenging. It is something that you are always taking a step back. Should I do it right now? Should I do it right now? Should I wait for a couple of months? Should I wait? And then it turns into years. It turns into years and years. I think if you think you will be adept at handling challenges, just do it. Just do it. Challenges are always there, always.
Yeah.
But don't shy away from it, and do not shy away from reaching out to people. Take follow-ups, and follow-ups are very important these days. And even if you're cold emailing people, try to take as much follow-ups as you can, because then they're converted into leads. And other than that, I think always have that entrepreneurship spirit in you. You
Yeah.
know, have that spirit being built in you, because leadership comes to you. It comes to you.
Yeah.
You have to have it comes to you, but the skill has to be built. So build the skills first, reach that stage, and then just start it. Just take the lead. Take that leap of faith that they say.
Yeah, it's all clear. Thanks a lot, and thanks also to our viewers. Let's meet you all at the episode 3 of EQ Talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sohan. Thank you.